number of teams very interested in Timo Meier, but in the end, he can only go to one club. So where could the GMs be looking for plan B, Chris?
Well, there certainly seems to be some crossover with James Van Riemsdyk, the veteran Philadelphia Flyers winger, from some of the teams that are in on Meier. And obviously these teams are lining up some perhaps secondary type options should the domino fall not in the direction they'd like. I'm looking at Winnipeg, Vegas, Carolina. You know, some teams not in on Meier like Minnesota and Colorado, I believe, are keeping tabs on JVR. And look, there was some question at some point with a $7 million cap hit whether James Van Riemsdyk would be moved at this deadline. I think with the level of interest and the fact that the Flyers are willing to retain some salary, it's inevitability he'll be traded here in the next week or so. Speaking of timelines, general managers are desperately trying to get a handle on the health of some of their talent currently on the IR to find out if they can move them, right, Dregs?
Yeah, and let's look at Sean Monahan of the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, his injury assessment is ongoing and continues in earnest this week. The Montreal Canadiens and teams around the National Hockey League are expecting that Monahan's status will be updated early next week. What does that prognosis look like? If it's positive and there's a good chance that he's able to come back either just before the deadline or shortly thereafter, then it makes sense. It's plausible that an NHL team looking for a veteran depth center would step up and at least inquire about Sean Monahan. Based on his play when healthy this season in Montreal, he could turn out to be a steal, but he has to be healthy.
Another issue with injuries is trying to determine the cap space. The Avs are anxiously waiting to hear about their captain right now. Hey, Pierre?
Yeah, Gabriel Landeskog, who finally did skate over the past week, but isn't near a return. And, you know, we talked about this earlier this season, that the Avs actually thought at the time that he would play before the end of the regular season. Now, there is no firm timeline for Gabriel Landeskog. It's not clear whether he will play before the end of the regular season. And they have to get a pretty good read on that by the deadline next week, because suddenly that could be $7 million that they can use at the deadline. Same for Eric Johnston, who's out long term. Can they use his $6 million? I will tell you this, I think they will absolutely be able to use either Johnston's or Landeskog's salary at the deadline, one or the other, which means more flexibility for the Stanley Cup champions as they try to add before the deadline. Listen, Ryan O'Reilly would have been of interest. Jonathan Toews, who's no longer on the market because of health reasons. Those guys aren't available. So I think for Colorado, they're still looking at a top 9 forward, but they're also, I think, looking at D depth because they've had a lot of injuries there.
The Avs need a little boost right now. They are the Insiders, Chris Johnston, Pierre LeBrun, and Darren Dreyer.